Have you ever noticed how some people don't control you with anger? They control you with approval. One day they make you feel seen, valued, even special. The next, they pull that warmth away, and suddenly you're left wondering what you did wrong. You start working harder, smiling wider, agreeing faster, just to feel accepted again. And before you realize it, you're not living for peace anymore. You're living for permission. It's like being caught in a game where the rules keep changing. Every time you think you've earned their approval, they move the finish line. Or like a marionette dancing to music that isn't its own, mistaking control for connection. You start chasing their nod, their smile, their silence, forgetting that the moment you crave their validation, they've already won. That's how they keep you dependent, not by force, but by making you believe you need their permission to feel worthy. But before we dive in, pay attention to this story, which will help you better understand the wisdom in this material. The story of Leo. Leo was the kind of person everyone liked, easygoing, helpful, always available. But lately, something didn't feel right. He couldn't explain it, but every time he walked away from a conversation with certain people, he felt small, doubtful, drained. It was as if their approval came at the cost of his clarity. He started noticing a pattern. When he agreed with their opinions, they praised him. When he stood up for himself or set boundaries, they'd go silent, or worse, guilt-trip him. One day, his childhood friend Sarah said, "Leo, you've changed," simply because he declined a favor. It hit him like a slap, not because it was mean, but because he realized he hadn't changed. He'd just stopped being someone else's puppet. That weekend, Leo visited an old toy museum in the city. One display caught his eye. A wooden marionette suspended by strings, its limbs hanging mid-air, motionless. A sign beneath read, "Controlled by others, motion is never your own." It felt personal. That image stuck with him. He realized the people around him weren't necessarily cruel, but they had learned how to pull his strings. A compliment when he obeyed, a frown when he questioned, a guilt-laced silence when he tried to walk away. So he stopped dancing. He didn't announce it. He didn't argue. He simply started checking in with himself first. Do I want this? Is this right for me? If the answer was no, he chose silence. Distance. A gentle refusal. It shocked people. They accused him of being distant, cold, selfish. But Leo just smiled. Because for the first time, he wasn't performing for applause, he was moving for himself. The lesson? Approval is a powerful drug, and some people hand it out like breadcrumbs to keep you following them. But the moment you realize your strings were never yours to begin with, that's when you become truly free. So when they pull, don't move, just pause and ask, am I a puppet or a person? While they play their games to keep you dependent, you have a choice: to keep chasing validation or reclaim your peace. Stay until the end, because the last one will change how you see every relationship you've ever had. Before we begin with the first lesson, if you find these videos helpful, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated on the latest content. Let's begin. Number 1. The silent treatment. Let's talk about one of the most manipulative psychological games people play, the silent treatment. It's not just about staying quiet, it's a calculated move meant to control your emotions. They withdraw their attention, their warmth, their presence, all to make you chase it. You find yourself wondering what you did wrong, trying to fix something you didn't break, and that's exactly where they want you. Uncertain, guilty, and dependent. Their silence becomes a weapon, and your craving for their approval becomes their power. Here's the truth. When someone uses silence as punishment, they're not seeking resolution, they're seeking control. They want you to feel small, anxious, and desperate for their acknowledgement. It's emotional manipulation disguised as distance. You start questioning yourself. Did I say too much? Should I apologize? Maybe I'm overreacting? But that's the trap. They condition you to associate peace with compliance. The more you chase their attention, the stronger their hold becomes. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius once said, "He who angers you controls you." Maintain your center. The same applies here. When someone tries to control you through silence, don't give them what they want, your reaction. Silence can only manipulate you if you give it meaning. The Stoics believed that peace comes from mastering your emotions, not from winning someone's approval. So when they go silent, don't fill the void with overthinking. Fill it with self-control. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Emily, was in a relationship where her partner used the silent treatment constantly. Whenever they disagreed, he would shut down, refusing to talk for days. At first, she tried everything, texting, apologizing, even blaming herself, just to end the silence. But every time she did, it reinforced his power. The silence would last longer, and the emotional distance would grow deeper. One day, Emily decided to do something different. She stopped reacting. When he withdrew, she stayed calm. She focused on herself, her work, her peace. And suddenly, the power shifted. The silence no longer had control over her. It controlled him. Because once she stopped chasing, he had nothing left to manipulate. So how do you handle this kind of psychological game? First, recognize it for what it is, a tactic, not a reflection of your worth. Their silence doesn't define you, it exposes them. Second, don't engage. The more you chase, the more control they gain. Let their silence echo back to them. And finally, stay centered. Your peace of mind is worth more than someone's approval. You don't need to beg for respect. It should be mutual, not conditional. At the end of the day, the silent treatment is only powerful if you let it be. When you respond to silence with strength, you reclaim your dignity. You remind them and yourself that your worth isn't determined by who chooses to acknowledge you. You don't need to chase attention to find peace. You just need to master your own calm. Number 2, the backhanded compliment. Let's talk about one of the most subtle and poisonous psychological games, the backhanded compliment. It sounds like praise, but it's laced with condescension. It's the kind of compliment that makes you pause and wonder if you were just insulted. You're actually really articulate for someone your age. You look great today, so much better than usual. Or, you're smart for someone like you. It's not kindness, it's control. Because beneath those sugar-coated words lies an attempt to chip away at your confidence while pretending to lift you up. Here's the truth. People who use backhanded compliments don't want to uplift you. They want to keep you off balance. They crave the power that comes from watching you second-guess yourself. You walk away from the conversation smiling politely but thinking, was that a compliment or an insult? And while you're caught in that confusion, they've achieved what they wanted, your mind's attention. You start craving their genuine approval, hoping that next time they'll compliment you without the sting. That need to please them is how they keep control. This is where Stoic wisdom cuts through the noise. Epictetus once said, "Flattery is the disguise of manipulation." A Stoic doesn't seek validation from others, especially not from those who twist praise into poison. When someone flatters you with hidden contempt, it's not a reflection of your worth. It's a mirror of their insecurity. They can't genuinely celebrate you because your growth threatens their ego. Their praise is just a way to reassert superiority while pretending to be kind. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Michael, worked with a colleague who constantly gave him backhanded compliments. Whenever Michael closed a big deal, she'd say, "Wow, I didn't think you had it in you." When he got promoted, she smirked and said, "I guess hard work really does pay off for some people." At first, Michael brushed it off, trying to be polite. But over time, those comments started to weigh on him. He began over-explaining his successes, trying to prove he deserved them. That's when he realized he had fallen into her psychological game. She wasn't trying to encourage him. She was trying to diminish him while making it look like support. So how do you handle someone who praises you with poison? First, see it clearly. Don't let their smile disguise the insult. Second, don't react. When you respond emotionally, you give them the satisfaction of knowing they've gotten under your skin. Instead, stay calm and detached. Respond with neutrality, "Thank you," and move on. Third, don't chase genuine validation from a disingenuous source. You won't find sincerity in someone who feels small when others succeed. At the end of the day, the backhanded compliment is not about you. It's about them. Their need to subtly belittle others is born from insecurity. True confidence doesn't need to compete. It celebrates others without envy. So the next time someone offers a compliment that stings, don't internalize it. Smile, stay grounded, and remember, you don't need their twisted approval to know your worth. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 3. The moving goalpost. Let's talk about one of the most exhausting psychological games people play. The moving goalpost. No matter what you do, how much effort you put in, or how perfectly you perform, it's never enough. You reach the finish line only for them to shift it further. You meet their expectations, and suddenly the standard changes. What was once good becomes not quite there yet. And before you realize it, you're caught in a cycle, chasing approval that keeps moving just out of reach. Here's the truth. People who move the goalpost aren't trying to help you grow. They're trying to keep you chasing. Their power comes from your need to please them. The moment you meet one demand, they raise another. Not because they expect more excellence, but because they fear losing control. If they let you feel enough, they lose their leverage. So they keep redefining success, knowing you'll keep running after it. It's not about improvement, it's about domination through disappointment. And this is where Stoic wisdom brings clarity. Marcus Aurelius said, "The more we seek the approval of others, the less control we have over ourselves." Every time you let someone else define your worth, you hand them the keys to your peace. You become their puppet, performing endlessly for validation that will never come. The Stoics teach us to detach our sense of value from the opinions of others, to act with virtue and intention, not for applause. When you stop chasing external approval, you regain control over your life. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him David, worked under a boss who always moved the goalpost. If David closed a deal, his boss would say, "Good, but why didn't you close two?" If he stayed late to finish a project, the response would be, "That's what I expect. You're not doing anything special." No matter what David achieved, there was always a new, unreachable expectation. For years, he poured his energy into proving his worth, until one day he realized something. The goalpost was never meant to be reached. It existed to keep him striving endlessly for someone else's satisfaction. That realization changed everything. David stopped playing the game. He started defining his own success based on integrity, effort, and self-respect. And when he did, the boss's control faded. So how do you handle someone who keeps moving the goalpost? First, stop chasing their approval. Their shifting standards are a reflection of their insecurity, not your inadequacy. Second, set your own measures of success. You don't need someone else's permission to feel accomplished. Define what enough looks like for you and stand by it. Finally, protect your peace. The more you give your power to someone else's ever-changing expectations, the more you lose your inner balance. At the end of the day, the moving goalpost is a trap designed to keep you in pursuit of someone else's validation. You'll never win that game because the rules aren't meant to be fair. So step off the field. Reclaim your standards. And remember, your worth isn't measured by how high they keep raising the bar, but by how steadfast you remain when you stop jumping through their hoops. Number 4. The guilt trip. Let's talk about one of the most emotionally draining psychological games, the guilt trip. This one is subtle, manipulative, and often disguised as concern or love. It happens when someone makes you feel selfish for prioritizing yourself, for setting boundaries, or for simply saying no. They twist your kindness into obligation, making you feel like doing what's best for you is somehow a betrayal to them. They'll say things like, "After everything I've done for you," or "Wow, I guess I just don't matter anymore." And suddenly, you're not standing up for yourself. You're apologizing for it. Here's the truth. People who use guilt as a weapon aren't seeking understanding. They're seeking control. They know that empathy is your strength, so they turn it against you. They make you feel responsible for their emotions, as if your happiness depends on keeping them happy. You start compromising your peace to maintain theirs. You say yes when you want to say no. You give more than you can afford, time, energy, forgiveness, because the alternative is being labeled as cold or ungrateful. But here's what you need to realize. If someone only values you when you sacrifice yourself, that's not love, it's manipulation. This is where Stoic wisdom shines through. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Do not waste what remains of your life on others' agendas." The Stoics believed that your time and peace are sacred, that allowing guilt to dictate your actions is surrendering your freedom. When you let someone else's emotions determine your choices, you stop living your own life and start living theirs. A Stoic understands that compassion doesn't mean compliance. You can care for others without letting them control your decisions. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Sarah, was the emotional caretaker in her family. Whenever she tried to set boundaries or take time for herself, her mother would guilt-trip her with phrases like, "I guess you're too busy for your own family now." Or when Sarah didn't immediately respond to a request, she'd hear, "Don't worry about me. I'll just do it alone, like always." Every time, Sarah gave in, cancelling her plans, overextending herself, and burying her own needs under layers of guilt. One day, after years of emotional exhaustion, she realized something powerful. Love that demands guilt is not love, it's control. So she began to stand firm, kindly but firmly saying, "I love you, but I can't do that right now." And slowly she reclaimed her peace. So, how do you handle guilt tripping? First, recognize it for what it is, a manipulation tactic, not an expression of care. Second, remind yourself that saying no doesn't make you unkind, it makes you honest. You can still be a good person and choose yourself. And finally, Stay grounded in your own values. The people who truly love you will respect your boundaries, not punish you for having them. At the end of the day, guilt is the chain manipulators use to keep you obedient. But you hold the key. Stop apologizing for protecting your peace. As the Stoics taught, your time and mind belong to you, and no one deserves the power to make you feel guilty for living in alignment with your own truth. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a "Thank God" and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 5. The comparison trap. Let's talk about one of the most quietly damaging psychological games, the comparison trap. This one doesn't come with open insults or loud manipulation. It hides behind subtle remarks and half smiles. "Did you see how well Mark did on that project?" Or, "You should really be more like Anna, she never complains." It sounds harmless, even motivational, but it's designed to do one thing: keep you insecure and compliant. They measure you against others to make you question your worth. And when you start competing for their approval, they win. Here's the truth. Comparison is one of the easiest ways manipulators maintain control. When you're constantly being compared, your focus shifts from inner growth to external validation. You stop asking, "Am I improving?" and start wondering, "Am I as good as them?" You start chasing someone else's standard, someone else's success, someone else's life. And in that endless pursuit, you lose sight of who you are. That's exactly how they keep you dependent, because as long as you're measuring yourself by someone else's achievements, you'll never feel like you've done enough. This is where Stoic wisdom cuts through the noise. Epictetus said, "Never value yourself by comparison, but by your own reason." The Stoics understood that true peace comes from within, not from competing with others. A wise person doesn't need to be better than anyone. They only seek to be better than who they were yesterday. Comparison, they taught, is the thief of tranquility. It distracts you from your path and anchors your worth to the shifting opinions of others. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Laura, had a friend who constantly compared her to others. Whenever Laura shared something she was proud of, her friend would respond with, "That's great. Did you see what Jenna did though?" Or, "You're doing well, but you know, Rachel got promoted twice this year." At first, Laura laughed it off, convincing herself it was harmless. But over time, she started doubting herself. Every accomplishment felt smaller, every success incomplete. She began chasing recognition instead of fulfillment. Until one day, she realized something. The only person she should be competing with was herself. So she stopped explaining her achievements, stopped seeking her friends' approval, and started measuring progress by her own standards. The moment she did, the comparison trap lost its hold. So how do you handle people who compare you to others? First, don't internalize it. Their comparisons reflect their insecurity, not your inadequacy. Second, step back and redefine your metrics. Success is personal. It's about growth, integrity, and peace, not about who's ahead or behind. And finally, protect your self-image. You don't owe anyone proof of your worth. Your life isn't a scoreboard. At the end of the day, comparison is a psychological leash that keeps you walking in circles for someone else's approval. The wise break free by turning inward. You don't need to be better than anyone. You only need to rise above who you were yesterday. When you stop letting others define your value, You step out of the comparison trap and into true freedom. Number 6. The conditional affection. Let's talk about one of the most emotionally manipulative psychological games, conditional affection. This is when someone's love, attention, or support depends entirely on your obedience. They're warm and kind when you agree with them, but the moment you assert yourself, the affection disappears. It's not love, it's leverage. They teach you that approval must be earned and that acceptance only comes when you play by their rules. And slowly, you begin to trade authenticity for peace, thinking that compliance is the price of connection. Here's the truth. People who give love conditionally don't care about who you are. They care about how well you serve their expectations. They use affection like a switch, turning it on when you please them and off when you disappoint them. This pattern is powerful because it preys on your deepest human need to be loved and accepted. Over time, you learn to walk on eggshells, avoiding disagreement just to avoid emotional withdrawal. You stop expressing your real thoughts, stop drawing boundaries, and start living in a way that keeps their approval intact. But that's not love. That's control. This is where Stoic wisdom brings clarity. Seneca once said, "The wise man is content with being loved for who he is, not what he gives." The Stoics taught that genuine love is steady. It's not conditional or transactional. True affection doesn't vanish when you speak your truth or set a boundary. A Stoic understands that peace of mind matters more than the illusion of harmony. Love that demands your silence isn't love, it's dependency. And the moment you start molding yourself to keep someone's affection, you lose the most important relationship of all, the one you have with yourself. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him James, was raised by a father whose affection always had strings attached. When James excelled in school or followed instructions, his father would praise him, showering him with attention. But the moment James questioned something or expressed a different opinion, that warmth turned cold. Days of silence, dismissive looks, disapproval disguised as disappointment. As James grew older, he carried that same pattern into relationships, doing anything to avoid conflict, saying yes when he wanted to say no, apologizing just to keep the peace. It wasn't until he studied Stoic philosophy that he realized something powerful. Love that vanishes when you express your truth isn't love. It's control wearing a mask. So he stopped trying to earn affection and started giving himself the acceptance others withheld. So, how do you deal with conditional affection? First, stop chasing approval. If someone withdraws love when you stand in your truth, that's their limitation, not your fault. Second, stay authentic. Real relationships don't require you to shrink yourself. And third, practice self-acceptance. The moment you find peace within, external approval loses its power. At the end of the day, conditional affection is emotional manipulation designed to keep you dependent. But the wise understand that love built on obedience isn't love, it's control. As Seneca taught, be content with being loved for who you are, not what you give. Because the moment you stop fearing the loss of someone's approval, you begin to experience the kind of freedom that no one can take away. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 7. The public praise, private criticism. Let's talk about one of the most deceptive psychological games people play: public praise followed by private criticism. On the surface, they seem supportive. In front of others, they sing your praises, compliment your work, and make you feel valued. But once the audience disappears, their tone changes. The same person who built you up in public tears you down in private. Their approval becomes conditional on secrecy, and their criticism, sharp, personal, and carefully timed, makes you question your worth. This game isn't about honesty, it's about control. They want everyone else to see them as kind and supportive, while making sure you know exactly who holds the power behind closed doors. Here's the truth. People who praise you publicly but criticize you privately aren't being honest. They're managing perceptions. In public, they wear a mask of admiration to appear generous and fair-minded. But in private, they reveal the truth. Envy, insecurity, or the need to dominate. They want to keep you confused, grateful for their public approval, but dependent on their private validation. It's a way to make you question your own reality. Maybe they're right. Maybe I really do need their guidance. Over time, this emotional tug-of-war keeps you trapped in a constant cycle of trying to please them. This is where Stoic wisdom gives clarity. Marcus Aurelius warned, "Beware the man who smiles to your face and poisons your name in your absence." Stoicism teaches us to judge people by consistency, not charm. True integrity doesn't shift with the audience. When someone praises you in public but belittles you in private, their kindness isn't genuine, it's strategic. A Stoic mind learns to see through the illusion, understanding that the opinions of others, especially those rooted in deceit, are outside of our control and unworthy of our peace. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Ethan, worked under a manager who seemed supportive. In meetings, the manager would compliment Ethan's work, calling him the team's rising star. But behind closed doors, he would nitpick Ethan's decisions, question his abilities, and tell him he wasn't quite leadership material yet. This constant contradiction kept Ethan doubting himself. Every compliment felt like a setup for criticism. It wasn't until he overheard his manager taking credit for one of his ideas that he finally saw the truth. The praise was performance, and the criticism was control. Ethan stopped seeking his approval, focused on his own growth, and eventually left to work for a leader who valued him both publicly and privately. So, how do you handle people who play this game? First, pay attention to patterns. Anyone can say the right things in front of others. Watch how they act when no one's looking. Second, don't take private criticism from someone who performs goodness in public. Their words are not meant to help, they're meant to diminish. And third, stop giving weight to people who need to hide their truth behind flattery. Real respect doesn't change with the room. At the end of the day, public praise means nothing if it's followed by private cruelty. True integrity is consistent. It doesn't need an audience. As Marcus Aurelius taught, beware of those who flatter you when others watch, but wound you when no one does. A wise soul doesn't crave approval from both faces. They simply walk away from the mask. Number 8, the victim act. Let's talk about one of the most emotionally manipulative psychological games, the victim act. This is when someone flips the script the moment you set a boundary. You say no to protect your peace, and suddenly they're the one who's been hurt. They sigh, withdraw, or guilt you with lines like, "I can't believe you treat me like this," or, "After all I've done for you, this is how you repay me." They twist your self-care into cruelty and your boundaries into betrayal. What they really want isn't understanding, it's control through guilt. Here's the truth. When you set a boundary and someone plays the victim, it's not because you did something wrong, It's because they lost their ability to manipulate you. People who use the victim act depend on your empathy. They know you don't like hurting others, so they weaponize your compassion against you. Instead of taking responsibility for their behavior, they shift the blame onto you, forcing you into the role of the bad guy. And if you're not careful, you start apologizing for protecting your own peace. That's the trap. They make you feel selfish for doing what's healthy. This is where Stoic wisdom offers clarity. Seneca once said, "The man who blames circumstances has surrendered his power." The same goes for people who constantly blame others for their feelings. They've surrendered responsibility for their own emotions. A Stoic understands that peace comes from self-governance, not from control over others. When someone refuses to take accountability, they become a prisoner of their own weakness. And when they try to make you responsible for their unhappiness, you must remember, their emotions are theirs to manage, not yours to fix. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Rachel, had a close friend who constantly leaned on her for emotional support. Rachel was kind and generous, always available to listen. But over time, the friendship started to drain her. When she gently told her friend that she needed some space to focus on herself, the reaction was immediate: tears, accusations, and guilt. "I guess you don't care about me anymore," the friend said. "Everyone leaves me in the end." Rachel felt terrible and nearly caved, but then she realized what was happening. This wasn't sadness, it was manipulation. Her friend wasn't being vulnerable, she was using pain as power. Rachel stood firm, and though it was difficult, she learned a powerful truth. People who truly love you will respect your boundaries. Those who manipulate you will resent them. So how do you deal with the victim act? First, separate empathy from obligation. You can care about someone's pain without surrendering your boundaries. Second, stay calm and consistent. Don't over-explain or apologize for setting limits. Boundaries don't require justification, they require courage. And finally, don't take ownership of someone else's emotions. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Your peace is. At the end of the day, the victim act is a disguise for control. It's how insecure people avoid accountability by shifting guilt onto others. But remember, you don't have to shrink to protect someone else's comfort. As Seneca taught, power lies in self-control, not in blame. So hold your ground, guard your peace, and let their drama fall away like noise outside a calm mind. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply.